live and ready to go.
Thank you, Ken. Welcome to the Natural Resources Committee meeting of January 27th, 2022. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the City of Westfield Natural Resources Committee will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information can be found on the City of Westfield website at www.cityofwestfield.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by tuning in to Channel 15 or Channel 12, or online at westfieldtv.org, or online at youtube.com, Westfield Community Programming Channel. No in-person attendance of the meeting of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the city's website an audio recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Thank you very much. And I will call this meeting to order at 6:32. Roll call. Who do we have with us? Councillor Alley?
Here.
Councillor Morganelli does not appear to be present at the moment. And Councillor Mello is here. Reading of the record, Councillor Alley, may I have a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion to make a reading from the meeting of December 16th and December 2nd.
December 2nd must be tabled till next meeting.
Okay.
As amended, I would second.
Or as amended for just December 16th.
Yes, to accept the reading of the record of December 16th. All in favor, Councillor Alley?
Yes.
And Councillor Mello, yes. Councillor Morganelli is not here. Public participation. I noticed that several Conservation Commission members are with us, but if you will hold on public participation, I will let you speak during item number 7, unless you have something else to discuss with us.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then we are on number 5, communications of departments or city officers. And I included it this month because on the 19th of January, the city was awarded by the Baker-Polito administration a grant for some of those air sensors that the DEP put out the applications for in the fall. And so Peter Miller sent in an application for Westfield, and we received 9 or are receiving 9 of these air sensors that will be placed throughout the city. There will be one at the airport, one at the intermediate school, one at Colonial Pine Acres, one at the Tech Academy, one down by police headquarters, the senior center, the transit center, the fire headquarters, and DPW headquarters. So these are spaced throughout the city in places that get high traffic, have high population density, and are all in EJ communities. And so this is just the beginning of us starting to get a sense of some of the air pollution that might be affecting our most vulnerable residents. And so this is a very good thing, and I congratulate Peter on achieving this, because not every community received these awards, and he did. So thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Councillor Alley, do you have anything you want to add to the record on that?
No, I think you said it all. Is this getting presented to the council, or is this?
If you would like it to, it can be. I only brought it up because it is a communication from a department.
To us. All right, so you just want a motion to place on file?
Yes, sir.
So a motion to place on file the air sensor grant.
I will second and roll call vote. Councillor Alley?
Yes.
And Councillor Mello, yes. So that will be placed on file, and thank you, Mr. Miller. Old business number 6 was to review and possibly amend the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Article 2, specifically 1862 and 65, the lateral sewer drain ownership and responsibility. So I've checked with former Councillor Emmershai, and I've checked with the law department, and it turns out that when they dug into this situation, although not common, actually favors the resident, And everyone believes that it would be a quite unpopular thing to try and make any changes at this point. And everyone recommended to remove without action.
Okay, well, that being so, so motion to remove from committee without action.
I will second. Any further discussion? Okay, so roll call vote. Counselor Ellie
Yes.
and Counselor Mello, yes. So that will be removed without action. And look, we're on number 7. We are being very efficient, Counselor Alley. Number 7, new business, changes to the Westfield Wetlands Protection Ordinance as requested by the Conservation Commission, coming into our committee on November 23rd of 2021. And members of our Conservation Commission have joined us, Chair Doe and Jim Murphy and Carl Group. And thank you so much, Colleen, for joining us as well. I will give you the floor to discuss the changes that you have presented.
Thank you very much. And the Commission's been working on this document since last summer, trying to upgrade it, make it more readable for the public, and provide more information for the public within it as well. So some of the changes, we've added some more complete definitions. On the second page, you can see some examples of those. So that people reading this online have an idea of what this terminology means. For example, certificate of compliance or a determination of applicability and so on. We've tried to also include better references as far as definitions of our resource areas. So on the next page, we've sort of explained in more detail things like the bordering vegetated wetlands, isolated wetlands, which are covered by the ordinance and not by the State Wetlands Protection Act. The idea of what our boundary or our buffer zones represent, whether it's a 100-foot buffer zone or a 50-foot buffer zone from the wetlands or the 200-foot riverfront area. Some of the types of other resources, things like bogs and marshes, swamps, something like a wet meadow, where people often don't think there's a wetland, but it could be a field that is defined as a wet meadow because of the particular plants that are growing in that and the type of soil that we see in that particular meadow. The next step is areas regulations. And one of the key features that we've done in our review is to try to document something that the commission has used sort of as a policy for ever since I've been on it, which is 17 years, and Jim Murphy's been on longer than me. But that is the idea of what we can protect within the buffer zones. And within the State Protection Act, there are 2 different buffer zones from a wetland, 50 feet and the 100-foot. And historically, the commission has tried to protect completely the 50-foot buffer zone. And what we've done in the ordinance is to try to document that and make it basically a no disturb zone, unless someone has a very compelling argument why they need to do something within that 50-foot area. And this is for new construction or new work. Obviously, someone who constructed something 10 years ago, we can't go in there and tell them to move it. And I checked other conservation commissions in other towns and cities, and many of them do also have a 50-foot undisturbed zone, like Springfield, Wareham, Northampton likes the 50-foot. They will allow some work within from 50 foot to 100 feet. Some like Wellesley have a closer one, 25 foot. But there's a consistency among the conservation commissions among the state that the 50-foot buffer zone is really an area that needs to be protected, and because that's the closest area to the edge of the wetland, where we provide more lenience as far as the area from 50 feet to 100. So that is basically the key feature, I think, in changing and updating the ordinance to to match what our policy has been, or what our practice has been for decades. Okay. We've also had included an area about agriculture work, and then a little bit about the process of how people apply for permits, more complete definitions of the types of hearings that we have. Again, a public hearing for a notice of intent, a public meeting for a request for determination of applicability. Okay. And the rest of it really is similar to what we had in the previous ordinances. So I think that's all I'd like to say about it, unless you have questions, or unless Jim or Carl like to add something that perhaps I've missed.
Mr. Chairman, David, I just want to reemphasize too, just some of the changes were made from suggestions from applicants, from landowners, and from environmental consultants that appear before the commission, either as land use agents or as civil engineers. And so we've kind of been listening. They've been more vocal over the last few years that we should codify the changes. And this ordinance goes back to '93, so it needs some updating. One of the things I do think is also very important to make it more readable and understandable to the general public is section 13-60, the purpose, which clearly outlines why this commission exists and what it does, and with a linkage to somebody's particular issue. And number one is protection of public and private water supply, which we know is a critical issue in Westfield right now. But it's an issue anyways everywhere. Protection of groundwater, flood control, storm damage prevention, prevention of pollution, fisheries, and wildlife habitat. Now, although we might not have, let's talk about wildlife habitat. We do have some impact over that, but not as much as other state agencies and departments. But we do act as a repository for how we're going to deal with a wetland area to deal with supporting a wildlife habitat, in particular, providing an area for reproduction, growth, and for access to water and food. So I want to emphasize that also. We cleaned up the bonding area a little bit, clarified something that used to come up a lot, which is, can governmental bodies bond? And we always did a workaround. Now we're cleaning up a lot. There's a lot of homework that was done on this. So I want to applaud David and the rest of the commissioners, and particularly Meredith Bornstein, who is no longer with us, for all the effort that they put in here, and the feedback from Shanna, the city attorney. So I hope I've added to Dave, and I'll hand this off to Carl.
I don't think I have anything additional that I feel compelled to add. I think they've covered it quite well. So, thanks.
Thank
I
you.
think,
very-
excuse me,
Oh.
Jim touched on a good point, that of bonding. We have the ability to ask for money from the applicants in the form of a bond to ensure that the project is done correctly. And if it's not, if we see problems, we can then use that money to get it fixed. What we've done is divide our bonding issue into 3 different sections: one for private landowners, one for the city and the contractors that the city uses, and then a different one for the state. And that seems to have helped us a lot in going through the different types of applications we get and trying to streamline the bonding process. So again, we started that several years ago, and Karen Lee really was one of the ones that helped us with that, and Meredith as well. So
Thanks, Dave.
we are a work in progress, and we're trying to make things easier, for the public to deal with us.
Yeah.
Any questions from the council?
I would like to thank you guys for the work. I went back when we started to go over this and through the minutes of the Concom meetings and saw how many times and the emails that went back and forth to go through this and to comb through and tease out some of this, some of these problems. And I just want to say that this was some serious heavy lifting, and I appreciate the dedication that it took to bring this far. It outstanding, dedication, seriously. I would like to say that there were questions that I received from a resident that I spoke with you about, Chair Doe, but I agreed to read into the record, and I will read Shanna's response if that's okay. And if you have anything else to respond to that, and then I'll open the floor for Counselor Alley. The resident preferred to remain anonymous, but asked me about the update to the Wetlands Ordinance and wanted to ensure that there's an exemption for existing structures and or land features, that residents won't necessarily need to get a permit every time they need to mow a lawn or a pasture or plow or regrade a gravel driveway, or for the city to plow in certain places where the road is too close to a brook. And that they wanted me to speak to make sure that there were no unintended consequences. So to that email, Attorney Shanna Reed answered, her understanding is that the most significant change to the ordinance is the creation of the 50-foot no disturb zone that has always been customary but was not codified. That part I added, that is not from her email. The language in that section specifically states that the activities or alterations to existing structures, lawns, stormwater systems, or other existing features will be considered only if they are activities or structures that can be demonstrated by the applicant as having been conducted or existing prior to May 20, 1993. As far as she's aware, that is the only grandfathering type provision in the ordinance. So between that issue, the from the previous ordinance's version, and the procedures you have outlined toward the end of the wetlands ordinance are all potential existing conditions that we know about in the city covered. If someone's family has had property with a gravel driveway and the brook runs next to it and it's been that way for 90 years, there are forms they can come to you once this is done so that you guys can work out what needs to happen. Can you?
I think, yes. One of the important things about the office and Colleen is that, people call up and say, do I need to contact you about a particular project? And, if it's within, 100 feet of a wetland or within 200 feet of a river, yes, they need to contact us. But then, typically, if they have questions, they can put in what's called a request for determination of applicability, and we'll go out, take a look at it, and if it's outside of our jurisdiction, then we'll tell them that, and they don't have to deal with us anymore. If it's within our jurisdiction, then we can decide whether it needs to go on to a notice of intent, if it's going to upset or alter the resource area, the river or the wetland. But if it's in a buffer zone, then we can say that the activity isn't going to affect the resource area, and you can go ahead and do it. But then that way they have it documented, and we have it documented. So especially if they want us to sell the property in the future, then they have documentation to show that they've gone through the proper channels to do whatever they want to do. So I think, it's a good service for the, for people. Currently we have a landowner who's had an order of conditions for us, and he has sold the property. So, and there's a bond on it. So now we have to deal with how do we deal with that? So we're involved with Shana on that problem as well. So I think we have a way of determining whether the activity is detrimental to the resource area or not. So, but it's important that people contact us first.
So any resident with any question can contact Colleen, and she will give them the appropriate steps to follow?
Yes. Yes, she will. Yep. And
I'll do the best I can.
Yeah. Again, we've explained those in the the ordinance. So it's an interesting job because we're basically enforcing a state law. So, we have responsibilities that we need to follow very carefully. It's been a very interesting process.
Thank you. Counselor Alley, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I know this commission does a great job, and it's a lot of hard work, and I think 60% of the city is under your jurisdiction in one form or another. So on here, when it talks about the security being determined by the commission, I don't see an amount or anything like that. So how is that determined?
The bond,
Yeah.
it depends upon what the project entails and how much work they're going to do, how close it is to the resource area, whether it's within the, whether they want to do something within 50 feet, or they want to do something between the 50 foot and 100 foot. So we basically have a sort of a rule of thumb on how much, and the commission discusses it and comes up with a number that we think is capable of solving any problem if it occurs at that site. So it may be as little as $500. It may be several $1,000s, depending upon the complexity of the site and how close it is to a resource area.
Thank you.
Could I add
Sure.
something else, Dave? Yeah, to Councilor Alley, one of the things we very rarely bond a homeowner that wants to build a shed. It's probably happened in the last 25 years, but it's pretty rare. So, we are certainly sensitive to the area where it's going. But we also look at the complexity of potential damage that might occur, and how, as David talked about, how close they are to the wetlands, but also how much equipment is coming in, where are they going to stage the equipment, the time of year, potential flooding, work in the spring, and spring rains are a bit different than right now, but we have different issues right now. So that is how we do the bond. The criteria is, what would it cost the city to go out there and solve a problem, let's say with a backhoe, with a bulldozer, to do a cease and desist, which we would have the authority to do. But at that point, something's got to happen. It's got to be stopped. And what is the role of the city? And is the city going to be covered financially, at least to some point, before we get a handle on what the problem is and how it can be stopped? Sometimes the state will hop right in, or they'll let us know about something. So that's the purpose for the bond. When the certificate of compliance is completed, the bond is returned, except when if it's a restoration or the planting of certain types of vegetation, and it grows through a growing season, similar to DPW when things go through different seasons before something is released. So I hope that enhances it or adds more information.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Counselor Alley?
No, it's read clearly, which I love. So
Yeah, we've thought about that. Yeah, we needed to make it more readable, so that anybody can look at it and say, "Oh, yeah, that's what they mean," or that if they developed a question reading it, they could, have a pretty good idea where we're going with this thing. It was just, we wanted it more understandable.
you guys could serve as a model for the rest of other parts of the government. Trust me.
It's particularly nice that everything is referenced, and then your consequences and your context are there. So that's helpful. To make it plain English, easy for landowners, business owners. Everyone knows what they have to do, and that's really helpful. I should also add, Counselor Alley, that I did have the opportunity to speak with Attorney Reed, and the law department is finished with this. It's fully vetted. And I would also just like to really thank you for this work, because there is an intimate and dynamic relationship between surface water and groundwater. And I don't need to tell you guys that I'm very concerned about the groundwater in Westfield. So, protecting our surface water is incredibly important because there is no separation under the ground between surface and groundwater.
Thank you.
So, Counselor Alley, if you feel that we have done our due diligence, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I would say motion to approve the changes in the ordinance. And are we referring this to, is this going out back to L&O now?
Actually, I spoke with the chair of L&O and it's coming to council.
Okay, so motion to approve and bring in front of council as written.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. All in favor, Counselor Alley
Yes.
and Counselor Mello, yes. So Conservation Commission, this will move to the next city council meeting.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. And with that, we are out of business unless you have something to add, Counselor Alley.
No, I'm all set. I'd like to just thank the commission for being here tonight.
Thank you. And we thank you for your efforts as we read about them in the newspaper. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all your hard work on this. And Counselor Alley, if there is nothing further, I will entertain another motion.
Motion to adjourn?
I will second. All in favor, Counselor Alley
Yes.
and Counselor Mello. Yes, we are adjourned at 6:57 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.
Good
Thank
night,
you. Good night.
Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you.